Okay, naming the joints. That joint there, typically that would be a shelf, for example. That is a housing joint. We've all made one of those. Think safe as houses, because when that goes into that slot there, it will take a load of force, which makes it safe as houses, a housing joint. And again, this is me writing this test on the quick. I've given you a very similar question to at the start of the test. A knockdown fitting is the answer. If you said block joint, well done. That is also correct, but I would have accepted knockdown fitting. Okay, last page. This table here is a dining room table. It tells you this information. You must look at this. It tells you you've got an oak top rail, an oak leg, and a table top. So that should put in mind the kind of process you're going to use, just to get you in the zone, basically. You need to read this information, it's important. In this case, actually, not the most important information here. Normally, it's vital. You must read this. The legs are joined to the top rail using the joint shown below. Name this type of joint. I've put another one here. It is a mortise and tenon. The mortise is the square hole. You're going to make one of these using a mortiser. Chunk out a big square hole. And you could make one of those using a tenon saw. You take a piece of wood and you saw down there, etc., etc. Using a tenon saw. Obviously, there's a link between a tenon saw and a tenon. Look at the spelling. Now, I must admit, I probably was spelling that wrong for many a year, and that one, both of these, I don't think it's very obvious how you spell them. You could easily have an extra N in there for tenon, but you don't. And you could easily have a C there for a mortise. I think this spelling, the correct spelling, is a bit more like mortise. But there you go, it's the correct spelling, mortise and tenon, mortise and tenon. Give two properties of oak that make it suitable for making the legs of the table. For each property, justify your answer. So, if these legs were made out of rubber, they would bend. If they're made out of paper, they would bend. Okay, so always think of completely stupid materials, and then you'll realise what oak has. So, oak is more suitable because it is stiff and does not bend. We could, if it's made out of rubber, you might easily just take chunks out of it because it's not very hard. So you could say that oak is hard. Hardness basically means it doesn't scratch. Hardness is a property, does not scratch, is the justification that it's looking for. So give two properties of oak that make it suitable for making the legs of the table. For each property, justify your answer. Durable. Okay, I've got durable down as number one there. Durable, oak would be fantastic for an outdoor table because it is durable. It contains acid that makes it quite rot resistant. It needs to be durable so it does not rot. That's the justification for why it needs to be durable. But it's an indoor table, so that one's questionable. We can quite easily get away with pine indoors, whereas we couldn't outdoors. Pine would rot very quickly outdoors unless it's protected. Whereas oak would be good. So that's, yeah, there you go. Finishes well, aesthetically pleasing. If you say it's aesthetically pleasing, because therefore the table will look nice and more people buy them, that would be the justification. Finishes well, that means you can sand it down, so it's nice and smooth, it won't give you splinters. This must be directly justified. So you could say it's hard there for property, so it does not scratch, would be the justification. Tough could be the property, so it could withstand impacts without breaking. If someone sat on it, quickly jumped on it, it wouldn't shatter because it is tough and it can withstand impacts. Strong, don't say strong, strong in compression would be suitable, so it can support the weight without breaking, would be fine. Stiff, stiffness is to do with how easy it bends, so the legs must be stiff so they don't bend when you put weight on it. Don't say sturdy A few people did. I know exactly what you mean. I'm not sure whether you would have got a mark in the test or not for sturdy, because it's not really a DT word. I'd rather you say stiff if you mean sturdy. And don't say strong, because it's pretty meaningless unless you say what you mean, so strong in compression. Okay, last question. A thin layer of oak is glued to a sheet of MDF to make the tabletop, exactly like what we're making at the moment. Describe, 4 marks. Describe 2 reasons why this is used rather than solid oak for the tabletop. Right, suitable reasons would be MDF is not as heavy as solid oak. That is 1 mark. You all know why, but many of you didn't say why. Why you didn't justify it. You should have said it's not as heavy. Therefore, it would be easy to move around the house safely without popping your back. MDF is less expensive than oak. Many of you said this. And out of sheer embarrassment of patronising your elders, because you're such respectful young people, you didn't go on to justify it. You should have said, though, so X because Y must be less expensive because, or so the product can be sold more cheaply. Less expensive, so the manufacturer can make more profit. Okay, obvious. Don't lose those easy marks. MDF is less likely to split than oak, which would mean the product would have to be thrown away, which would mean that's your because part. Okay, I know a friend of mine who spent a fortune on an oak table, and unfortunately it just split straight down the middle. It would cost over £1,000 for this table, and it become useless because it's a natural wood. It grows in the summer. It expands in the winter when it gets a bit moist, and it dries out in the summer. It keeps doing that, expand, contract, and then eventually it just splits along the grain, which is why we quite like MDF. It is very stable. MDF is stable and does not twist and warp like oak, which can make the plates wobble. Okay, I must admit, after I said it does not twist and warp, I thought, how do I justify that? In the end, I come up with something very simple. If you put a plate on a table which is warped, the plates would wobble. If you put a cup of water on it, it might tip over. Anything like that you need to say, even though it's obvious, to get your extra mark. So you must explain why it's bad, even though you think it's obvious. Don't lose easy marks, is what I ask you guys to do. Okay, so I'm sure you're all seeing now that when if you ever retook this test, you would get loads and loads of extra marks. And if you were a bang average student, according to this test, and you got 55%, I'm sure you can see here where I lost quite a lot of marks at the back, and I'd easily be getting B's and A's by following these basic rules. So, just to end, I would like you now to look at the test, cover up the answers, and make sure you now can get all of the questions correct. That will make you learn. Okay, listening to me won't necessarily make you learn. The important bit now is you retest yourself. Did you know that when you test yourself, it's the best way to learn information? You are thinking what the answer is, and your brain is actually physically changing. It's like a machine, and it's throwing out new neurons to make these different connections. It is physically being changed every time you ask yourself a question and think of the answer. You're making that information easier for your brain to retrieve under a pressure situation, for example, a test. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do now is go and physically change your brain. Go and retest yourself, and hide the answers, and make sure you can pull that information out of your brain. Then you're going to turn a short-term memory, i.e. listening to me blather on, and you're going to turn it into a long-term memory, which is the whole point of doing this. Okay, you may well re-watch this video as required and listen to my very smoothing, relaxing voice, which I'm sure you like to do. Okay, hope that's been useful, guys.